Hello everybody, this is Project Alpha. My name is Nikolai Feldman. You are watching War Diary with Alexey Arestovich live. Hello Alexey. Good evening. Alright, I want to remind our listeners that our format here is dedicated first of all to the events of this war. So let's take a look at the war events, namely yesterday's tragedy in Sumy, 34 people dead. The formal logic of this strike from the point of view of damaging Ukrainian Armed Forces, is it effective, minimal, zero? Nikolai, as the result of this, the commander of the Sumy Reactive Artillery Brigade had perished. Not because of this strike, he actually was by accident in the nearby cafe. That's what is at least reported. Most of the casualties are civilians, and this is a repeated motive of this Russian-Ukrainian war. Russians are getting some agent leak from Ukrainian side that there will be military gathering or some event happening, and they send 2 Iskander missiles. It's about $6 million together. And it's not even about the price. This is a rare missile for them. Let's put it this way, that there are a lot more targets in Ukraine that they have than they have these missiles. And not a single army in the world, however degenerate some officers or commanders may be there, would not be hitting civilians purposely. Even Second World War German SS or modern-day Iranian troops, they would not be attacking civilians. Plus, this is a ballistic missile launch, so every time they launch a ballistic missile, they actually send a note to NATO. Not too many people are aware, but there is a joint group that discusses, that keeps trace of Russian launches, and Russia has to inform NATO, or tries to inform NATO not to cause global cataclysm. So it is also not a simple process. Iskander missile is launched from a prepared site. Minesweepers, UAVs, radioelectronic defense, they get there, they make a launch, and they leave it immediately. But altogether, this is not a simple thing. It's a 3 or 4 hour deal. Doing all that and going through all that hassle just to hurt people in Kryvyi Rog or Sumy in some public place is mostly a conspiracy theorist field. So what one needs to understand, of course, this is a war crime from Russia. You cannot qualify that any other way, because war crime is not that they targeted civilians. They neglected the lives of civilians when selecting the target. And that falls under certain rules of war adopted internationally, and this is why it should be qualified as the war crime. And this is a systemic factor. It's been in work here in Ukraine all the time when Russia attacks us. Don't forget Kherson, where they hit kids' hospital. Don't forget Kharkov, where they damaged kindergarten. And just in the last few days, there were 10 strikes like that. This is in regards to Russian side. We should not have any illusions. Russian military political leadership will kill as many children as they want to. Not on purpose, but they definitely would not fret. They would easily add more. And it's not about Russia too much, it's about us. This is what we should be asking ourselves about. The first who was reporting that was Mariana Bezuglaya, when she's basically taking all responsibility on her shoulders without even being an official person at this point. Karnatok mayor comes out and says also something is wrong there. And here we discover that the head of Sumy Defense Administration, who is also a general, and also General Nesterenko, well known in the infantry. Since the time he was commanding 30th Brigade in 2014, there's a lot of interesting nuance of his command. Regardless of many warnings that they received, as both Mariana and Mayor are commenting about, they're holding the 7th anniversary of 117th Brigade of Territorial Defense in Sumy. And they are doing it in a basement of the building where children's event is supposed to be held at 11. They're holding their event at 10. At 11 is the kids' play on the upper stories of that same building. And this is a really wrong approach. You do not do things like that. So formally, they indeed held the meeting at the basement, outside the easy-to-hit areas, but they did it in the wrong building. This is a criminal neglect, in my opinion. Not the first and not the last. We already experienced the missile strikes during 128th Brigade near Zaporozhye celebration, when the missile hit them during the process. Mariana states that this is still not investigated and guilty people are not punished. And in this story, we can see as the litmus test all of these dark sides of the Ukrainian insurgency army dugout, as I was talking about in previous streams. This approach stinks. Those military who are supposedly always right and should never be criticized and are beyond any reproach or any punishment. All that conceals really, really poor decision-making. Criminal neglect, I think. And of course, Russians committed the war crime, but who gave them an opportunity, who provided an opportunity to commit this crime? And this is our military political leadership of Ukraine, classically, appointed by president. And now the proper question would be, will they be punished for that? I can predict with almost 100% probability that no. Even if one or both of them will be removed, they'll be removed for something else, not for neglect in this case. Not to give food for Russian commentary by Solovyov and Simonyan, right? But that makes us secondary. That makes us dependent on the commentary of Russian talking heads. Should we be reacting to some of them singing certain songs or going to the shower? Do we need to change and behave in accordance to whatever Russian Putin-sponsored talking heads are talking about? These people who insist on keeping an eye on what Moscow says are mad, in my opinion. And they're attacking the woman who named the real cause of what happened there to prevent that happening again. They are attacking her instead of trying to figure out how to prevent these things from happening. So again, Alexey, we did talk about Mariana before. This specific one, this event is at the bare minimum, if they were targeted, if Russians were targeting our military, they failed to achieve their goal. We managed to save our troops. And some people are saying, some publications are saying that we learned some things and military servicemen were not killed by, were not maimed or wounded or injured or destroyed by this missile attack. Unlike, for example, at 128th Brigade that you mentioned, when a lot of them were dead, were killed as the result. And a lot of trainees strikes on their facilities caused a lot of casualties. Here, we don't see that. The only officer that was killed is most likely a random victim of these events. So can one say here indeed that organizationally Ukraine is improving, and that's why the military servicemen have not perished as the result of that strike? Right. The ones who were targeted did not die, but we lost 34 civilians. Well, Alexey, the trolley bus was hit, and there were no military next to or inside the trolley bus. Well, they were not hitting the trolley bus, Nikolai. Trolley bus got hit by shrapnel. They were not targeting that specific vehicle. As you could see, for those of you who watched the video, there's a lot of shrapnel in the wall that was shot. Alexey, there were some cassette-type munitions on them. Nikolai, it is just a warhead, the way it is structured in this missile. So, of course, they were targeting to maim and kill more. And Of course, it's Russians. They are not afraid to shoot 2 missiles on Sunday morning in the middle of the city with civilians out and about. So, no surprises there. But what do you imply, Nikolai, about the event with our generals? Well, Alexei, I think that one can imply that our generals created the conditions for all these casualties. Syrsky, Nesterenko, and I understand that war is probably the cruelest expression of mankind, but currently it does look like there are no serious reasons to punish military leadership for preserving the lives of their soldiers, at least for the soldiers, and the damage to the armed forces of Ukraine. I hope, Nikolai, this is humor. I hope this is soft humor. No, Alexei, I'm rather frank here. All right, let me explain it in simple words, Nikolai. Army exists to perish before any civilian dies. And when in the situation we have civilian who perished and military who survived, this is complete inversion of the purpose of the army. In this case, all their commanding officers, or the ones who led to that situation, should be reprimanded and thrown in jail for life. Oh, they're patriots. Okay, 15 years maybe. Seriously, if we are looking at situation, if you're a real military, a real officer, and whatever you made a decision-wise, if it caused the death of civilian and you managed to survive, I mean, that's a reason to finish your endeavor on this planet. If you have any old school manners in you. These days, I understand they probably will not do any of that. But at least the court, at least they should be punished for that. All right, Alexei, let's accept this maxima that you explained about the purpose of the army. Then one should say that there should not be any military events in the areas where civilians congregate, where there is a risk that they may get hurt. Right? Is that correct statement? Conclusion number one? Of course not, of course. Under no circumstances there should be events like that in the middle of the city. Moreover, near Sumy there is a great, not too well known, but very well masked, fortified place where they all could have been rewarded for 7 years of their brigade, and they could be celebrating anything they like. But another interesting point here that is widely spread by Russian propagandists and Russia proper, they're saying that this brigade actually participated in Kursk incursion. So understandably, that's why they were shooting them up with such a vigor. And one can ask, if you guys are organizing the event 30 miles from the border, where the Russian troops that just kicked you out of their region are based, you need to also accommodate not only for ballistic missiles, but for gliding aerial bombs, because they fly for 70 miles, 50 or 70 miles. And instead, this is completely neglected. And I think the group of people who should be punished would be the ones who are making decision about celebrating it this way. But I suspect they will not be punished because they are appointees of Zelensky and also team members of Syrsky. Because also our country just does not punish its own officers and generals in this war, or high-ranking at least. And all this pathos in our media and blogs in Ukraine that Russians are to blame, do not even touch, do not even think about mistakes made by Ukrainian military, this approach pushes everybody to neglect the cause and effect. And I would only remind here for everybody to of the Sun Tzu document where he says, if you want to understand the system, pay attention to how it rewards and how it punishes. In our system, nobody gets punished. Some of the higher rank getting rewarded, but I think we lost our war when we stopped punishing our military for criminal decisions. All right, Alexei, thank you for explaining some formalities here, but in my view, I want to also discuss another angle. We want to go back to the question of what is our tactics in this peace track. Do we have it at all? because it seems like until the strike in Sumy, we saw a Russian attack on Kryvyi Rog. Again, they neglected the civilian casualties, same thing in Sumy. And between these two strikes, there were other events carried out, there were other attacks carried out by Ukrainian troops on different Russian energy and infrastructure objects. They're dual purpose, I think, most of them targets. And in light of all that, I do not quite understand what peace track are we talking about? And are we on a peace track? Are there any limitations? What is the logic between two sides? And what political signals should one be sending or guessing based on the behavior of each other? Look, Nikolai, it's rather simple here in this regard. There are only two steps on the peace track. First of all, we have not reached any conclusion on the rare earth minerals. That's one. And two is the interview that Zelensky gave to CBS channel, which is actually in a state of conflict with Trump, and Trump reacted to that with a pretty strong tweet. So what Zelensky is doing to save the lives of his people, he goes to the opposition channel that Trump is, I think, taken to court currently, because this channel continues to populate media sphere with anti-Trump rhetoric, and he gives an interview there that is easily pushed around and used to attack Trump. And he attacks Vance in this interview and talks of Trump as almost the agent of Russia, that Americans are informationally helpless and everybody is impressed with Russian propaganda, and he pleads to Trump to visit Ukraine and see it with his own eyes. What is the message of this? Oh, right, Alexey, it's not friendly, right? Exactly, Nikolai, it's not. The message is you cannot be intermediaries. You are sort of serving Putin in your current state. You need to come to Ukraine and start serving Ukraine and our purposes. Zelensky here performs as a saint who comes out and says you cannot serve God and money at the same time. Putin is money, so serve us, we are the gods. We are morally correct in this country, we are more to the left, and you have only one option, Mr. Trump, to apologize, to visit our townships that are being destroyed by Russia, and understand the picture and start sending tomahawks into Russian proper by 1,000. It's difficult to imagine a heftier landmine under this negotiation track, as well as the degree of detachment from reality. And you can bring a long list of diagnoses for Mr. Zelensky. I think you'll run out of sheets of paper if you'll be describing his current psychological condition based on his statements, from which Trump, of course, makes a conclusion that Zelensky is an active opposition to Trump's administration. He's attacking things that are not normally to be attacked and also forbidden by protocol. He throws moral degree into attacking Trump and also accuses Trump and his administration into working for Putin's admin, directly or indirectly. This is just a stream of attacks. And what is it for? So that Trump's administration would give more aid or give better intel data, would be tracing Russian Iskander missiles better. By the way, Americans usually do send data when they get it to Ukraine to help us defend ourselves. So what is that demarche for? To fortify the rare earth deal? To change it yet again? All right, Alexey, let me... Okay, you finish your thought. I will remember my hypothesis here. No, Nikolai, it's your turn. You speak up. Well, my hypothesis here is that Zelensky shows this way that he is in the corner, that he is not comfortable, but this is the only thing he can do from this corner. Well, no, Nikolai, this is not a corner. This is a position. If it is a corner, he placed himself in that corner. But his position, as I can read it, is that you all are dumb and I'm smart. And I will teach you all to love your homeland or Ukraine, and your only exit here is to repent and join us in attacking Putin. And it's an amazing flexibility from Zelensky, probably rival to the old factory of concrete manufacturing. Same level of flexibility. And translating that into normal language, normal parlance, from Zelensky's language, it means that I don't care how many more Ukrainians die, I'll continue this war. And he's accusing everybody being immoral, that they're not joining him with an open heart and a lot of money. All right, Alexey, and then Trump, of course, explodes that after that. He, of course, cannot be called pro-Russian. He continues with the same sanctions that Biden implemented. He actually is adding new sanctions against Russia that actually make it more difficult for them in the area of scientific data, scientific knowledge transfer. They're being disconnected from certain databases as the country with Trump government sanctions. Am I understanding it right that the process is still exacerbated by Trump and his people? Nikolai, even if this would not be exacerbated, this would not be pushed further, we still would have a situation where United States continues to supply military equipment to Ukraine, continues to give intel data to Ukraine, but the status of intermediary is problematized when you're doing all that. Plus, in order to finish this conflict, United States are trying to finish it with obtaining certain economic interests in Ukraine and, of course, desire to defend them from any circumstance. Russia could have played, looking at all that, saying, you know what, we don't need intermediaries like that. Bring us somebody who would not be interested in this conflict financially. Yet Ukraine comes out and says that Trump administration is not helping them enough, and does it very vocally. So I'm in a constant moral dilemma, and for the last 2 years I'm feeling we should be doing our streams with 90% of cuss words and 10% of data, because it's just physically hard to not swear. I very often detest how I describe things because I am bringing very long weaves to explain what happens, when I really, really deep inside want to switch to military language and just use expletives to explain, to carry the thought to our audience. But you will behave, right, Alexey? I'm trying, Nikolai.
What I want to say here, what is not clear to me is that, okay, yes, United States do take a lot of responsibility onto their shoulders. They basically take the function of control, or that they are responsible for Ukraine in front of Russia and the world. Do you want, addressing Russia, to call Ukraine our proxy? Sure, you can. And Russians seem to believe in this negotiation framework. They even start telling him about hockey, giving him some portraits and stuff through Witkov, and they start emotionally talking about it. And apparently they achieve some agreements. These agreements are achieved between the United States and Russia, not directly between Ukraine and Russia. So what these responsibilities are, what these terms are, what Ukraine can do, what Ukraine should not be doing, what signal does Russia give with these casualties when they hit civilians in this process? You mean which signal, Nikolai, are Russians giving to America? Yeah, right, I think it's some system, right? Some signals. Oh, no, Nikolai, this is not the system. You don't understand things about Russia. They're not giving any signals. Let me tell you with one cuss words how it works. When I first joined at this Institute of Infantry back in 1994, we all wanted to be super masculine, and the first thing we were interested in what kind of hand-to-hand combat will be taught to us. It was the paramount important piece of knowledge. In the Soviet Army, there were 4 kinds of hand-to-hand, 4 levels of hand-to-hand training. Level 1 was basic, and level 4 was for special forces. And we had the head of the PE in this institute who still at that time was the owner of the record on officers pentathlon, much more complex sport than, say, just running a marathon. So we were standing there on a square in front of him, all tied up, with our belts and buckles up under our armpits. If you remember the Treasure Island cartoon, that was kind of that type, the way they're walking and standing there. And so we're standing there listening to his speech, and we're asking him, when he said, "Do you have any questions?" We asked him, what kind of hand-to-hand fighting are we going to be taught? Hand-to-hand 2, 3, or 4? And his answer was, "Fellas, in Red Army, there is only one hand-to-hand system, the system of a central fuckery. And until you do not have your personnel so much that the only thing they can think about is falling and sleeping, the battle worthiness of your detachment will always be vectoring towards zero. And since there is 30 or 118 people for each of you, because you're young officers, you need to be tough. And that's what we're here to do." And that's what I'm trying to weave it into, Nikolai. You do not understand the system of Russia. The only system they have is the central fuckery. Their main goal is to respond to the message sent from the center. The center says, we're destroying whoever we call fascists today, and that's what they're doing. And upon receiving such order, for example, in Kursk, they get a message that there will be aggregation of Ukrainian military personnel in a certain locale, right? They will not be wearing any armor, because when you reward them, they're not in bulletproof vests, not in helmets. And as Russians believe, these were the people who were participating in Kursk district incursion, and as they believe, I'm not saying it's true, they've destroyed things there, and they've tortured supposedly civilians. Again, Russian beliefs, I do not share them. And then all they do is literally roll out their missiles and shoot that area. And nobody will ask. Lavrov will not call Minister of Defense and ask, "Hey, what are you doing there? You're breaking our peace negotiations with Trump." No. Putin provided them with a favorable regime, favorable mode for making these decisions, and they're just following through with that centralized fuckery. That's it. There is no secret signals or special politics, as some people start to gather around and send messages around on social media that this is a systemic policies of terror. Fellas, as one acquaintance of mine said, I would have paid big money for that to be systemic terror. This is not. You don't understand whom you're fighting with. Everybody writing how horrible Russians are on the 4th year of war. No. You should not be asking about them or Trump, but ask about yourselves. How, by the 4th year of this war, you do not understand whom you're fighting with? And you're writing about the eternal struggle of Ukrainian people. So in several centuries, you failed to recognize your enemy. And I'll quote you Strugatsky brothers from Inhabited Island. When somebody was, in their book, tortured by counter-intel, he, addressing new counter-intel officers, was telling guys, you're so puny compared to the previous ones. You're too emotional about it, what you're doing, and that gives me force over you. In the good old imperial counterintelligence, they've been sewing my, see that iron hand, they've been sewing that hand off, and they were complaining about low salaries, about poor food, about all the regular daily activities, and that was also followed by bureaucratic messaging back and forth. That's when it was scary. That's when I was afraid of them. They were the machine, and you're so emotional that you don't scare me at all. And that's a similar thing. That's where I'm going to. The problem of Russian strikes on our kids is not that they're greedy and horrible monsters who got the blood dripping off their fangs, who want to destroy more civilians in the near Easter celebration. No, this is a dumb machine. There are lieutenants and colonels with all their daily routines and problems and getting yelled at by their wives. That colonel could be launching ballistic missiles on Ukrainian children, and his wife could be texting him saying, "Hey, you failed to check our youngest school book for 2 years, and you need to go to school now and do something and stop by the shop, buy something." This is how it's on the other side. You do want to imagine that you're fighting with the eternal enemy and you're heroic. Okay, that's the play. But on the other side, it's so primitive and so mundane that basically somebody would get a message, don't forget to eat your lunch before you shoot the missile. You put more emotions into your social media than they put in the month of their life activity. As long as you're fighting and thinking that you're fighting with eternal enemies, you do not understand what's happening there. And that means you cannot win. I'm sorry. And I'm also following the trend of our Ukrainian insurgency army dugout fans, that smaller project fans. I would say you guys with that approach, you're doing everything to lose it. Can I quote one post, Nikolai, that I wrote? Because not everybody is familiar with that. Philosophy and barracks taught me one simple rule. There's got to be added value in every statement that you make. The thoughts that have not sounded before or that have been pronounced but with a different intonation, different meaning. Those who steam their emotions upon looking at the Russians' attacks on our civilians, they start going down. And unfortunately, or fortunately, the vector of all those fans of the Narrow Project for Ukraine already defines what will happen to them and to their project. On the fourth year of this war, writing about vulgarity and psychological degeneracy of Russians, one needs to be not too bright. It's pretty clear with Russians, actually. For achieving their political goals, they will kill as many civilians as they want to, and they'll add a couple more scoops on top. It's also clear with Trump. They want certain agreements about Arctic, about space, and they will stoically take a lot more abuse from Russia on this topic as long as they get their things in place. So running around screaming about morality or immorality of certain events in this war, this is not the right vector for Ukraine. This is the vector to the historic toilet. The world politics is done by brutal leaders. What do Ukrainian authorities, what kind of signal they give? Their signal is when everybody will understand that we're so noble, we're democratic, we're the ones who are suffering. Why they're not understanding it? Why can't we get to the global justice? And I'm explaining here that nobody is democratic and clean. Democratic ones do not jail blogger who accidentally took a picture of drafting commission building. They do not give her 5 years in colony. This is a broken life after that. What for? Moral people do not use dead bodies of their enemies to write the alphabet letters, and they're not giddy about the shark eating some tourist from Russia. Ukrainian Insurgency Army Dugout as a project is pretty basic, and it does want to crawl towards the grave. You know, the projects that want to live, they look for all opportunities they can find. They try to expand. The ones that want to wither and die, they cut everything off. Just like the Institute of National Memory cut off Zhvanetsky, the famous humorist author, from their registries. And during the times of this project, the Narrow Ukraine project, Ukraine's population dwindled in half. Projects die, people can change. This project has no hope. There'll be no Trump, Scholz, or anybody else to save it. Nobody can save it. This project has no perspectives. It only has death, and it is death, and it brings death. The trajectory of survival for Ukrainians begins with changing the vector of questions. Not about what's wrong with Trump or what's wrong with Russians, but what's wrong with us. And until we start seeing these questions in the official discourse, we do not have much chances. We're gliding towards that waterfall with the death at the bottom. And these cases will continue repeating. Over and over, again and again, because the enemy is the best teacher. Russians are probably tired of sprinkling all that civilian blood in our faces so that we start thinking about what's happening. That we probably should not be gathering our military for rewarding ceremonies together in one place. And we should not be standing behind a mortal death project that leads us to Paraguay option, fight till the last of us. We need to find our own position in this world. We need to understand that the existing economic system will be a reflection of our ideological system, and it will lead also to the probability of wars with our neighbors in one or the other fashion, regardless of the last name of the leader. And here is a simple example of this project. The debt to Ministry of Defense is about 54 billion. These are people who took hundreds of millions of dollars for contracts from Ministry of Defense. So they pocketed this money and disappeared. And they're also the ones who are actually manufacturing armored vehicles. I'm not going to name company names here, but they're manufacturing. And of course, they're making some money on it, but they're manufacturing in the right ordered quantities, armored vehicles, APCs for Ukrainian military. So now, Special Investigation Committee is now prosecuting this factory that works. They're not spending time on prosecuting and catching those who took money and left. They're prosecuting the ones who are actually manufacturing things, and they're basically looking for bribes from this organization. And these are the signals given from the central power. If you are working for this country, and if you are making money, and if you are doing something positive, there'll be administration coming for your money and shaking you for more. And this is an endless cycle. It never stops. While those who just steal money and run with it, they continue to be unprosecuted. Some of them, even from the administration, remain in power, remain in their positions. In the worst case, they may be demoted somewhere. If you're sharing with the right people in your system, you're going to be fine. And that's the signal that is being sent from our political system, that all the good things are being erased and suppressed. People, I want to ask, what do you want? In these conditions, with that signal, do you want to win with this project, with these signals? And again, to sum it up, Ukrainians need to understand one thing that I think everybody else understood except for Ukrainians. The war is not a problem for Ukraine. This is a consequence. This is the consequence of the main problem. Yes, it is big scale, it is tragic, and seems it's bigger than the sun, and etc., etc. The problem for Ukraine is the existing project. It dwindled the numbers of Ukrainians since the 90s in 50%. It's a simple criteria, how successful the project is. Is your population growing? Ours dwindled in half. All the Holodomors and all the wars taken together have never damaged Ukraine so much as this project. If you lost half your population, no, not all of them died. Most of them actually fled. Then you probably should start thinking, something must be wrong here. But at the moment when you need to start thinking and to change this project and to figure out the new vector that will finish the war, that will give a chance for Ukraine, because this project, even if Trump finishes with war, this project will not give Ukraine a chance in the long term, because at the end of this war, those military officers who are defending us now will probably flee the country just as fine. So the main challenge is to recognize that we need to change our project. The war is always about shadow in Jungian meaning. All the dark shadows float up, both in Russians and in Ukrainians, because war is always a dark event. But it's not the one who captured Pokrovsk that wins in war. It's the one who integrates the shadow better. And integration of shadow starts with acknowledgement that, yes, we do kill, we do shoot, we do a lot of vulgar and weird moralizations on the deaths of our soldiers. And I'm not even talking about finishing the war. I'm just saying about taking immediate measures so that our children would stop dying. And people do not see it from the inside, because while they're under the impulse of the social media and the government-funded media, it's difficult for them to get outside of this framework. They're being hit, the media keeps screaming, like in Krivoy Rog, right? The missile hit on the kids' playground, and then UAVs are hitting them at night. People are just in a condition where it's difficult for them to raise their heads and understand that without changing the way we do everything here, the way we organize our country here, we will always be facing the same problem. Ukraine will be dwindling and will be slowly withering. Zelensky, Poroshenko, Petrenko, Ivanenko, whoever you put there, the same story will repeat in just a slightly different flavor. And by the way, both Trump and Putin are fighting with that project. And we should be fighting with that project. And our exit is to change this project and take initiative away from Trump and Putin, because the way they are finishing with this project is different than how we would prefer to have it. And the problem is not that it's against Russia. First of all, this project is against Ukraine, right? It denounces a lot of smart people, writers, politicians, successful businessmen. Anna Shevtsova, the most successful banker in the history of Ukraine, mother of 5 kids, whose husband participated in this war, who donated a ton of money to our military, apparently suddenly sanctioned by Zelensky government. Why? No formal reasons. They just want to split her business and enjoy it. I don't know how else to explain to Ukrainians that it's not about this war, Putin or Trump. It's about what we are contributing to this world, to ourselves. People. Zelensky was ready to sign peace deal. Trump's offer to Zelensky and Putin was generally agreed upon. But when he performed his act in the Oval Office, and he performed it for one simple reason, he wants to exchange a deal. He doesn't care about who owns natural resources, because all of these in Ukraine, they belong to oligarchs, and they cannot mine them because they don't have technology. So if Americans came with their corporations instead of our oligarchs, what would happen? We've got technologies, jobs, processing facilities. I'm not even talking about more remote perspectives that Americans probably by 2035 would have brought us to European Union. And here we already have processing, and we got the same tariff politics and infrastructure, and mining is all set and available for Europe. And probably secondary processing, and we could be making batteries and other things. This contract is beneficial for Ukraine from all angles. There is no real rare earth mafia, maybe Pinchuk and his environment. There are just some oligarchs who still own the area. So the question is, what is he defending so much? I'll tell you what. He understands the project is good. He understands that it's not signed for one reason, because he wants his own personal security guarantees. And before that, he asked for security guarantees just for leaving. Remember, he said, I'm ready to leave. But when in the Oval Office he made this weird act, when he was not given any guarantees, he was told that it's not about you, leave. And you idiots in Ukraine supported him. He got the rating higher. Now he is demanding other security guarantees. For him, now, security guarantees is the right to be re-elected, which absolutely goes against the wishes of Trump administration. Of course, Russia is not appreciating that. And I think Ukrainians should not be liking it too. And when you ask me what can we do here in Ukraine, do not support him. Because with more support that he gets from you, he continues to pump up that bloody war machinery that continues to sprinkle civilian blood, children's blood in your faces. Without that, he would not be feeling support. He would not be demanding the right to be re-elected because he has rating. He is now holding upon the throne that is sitting on your blood. And you're just asking, what can we do? You still don't understand. It's a simple story. You are feeding the death machine that's devouring you and your families with your likes, with your support, with your posts. These people in the office, they react only to the applause. In 6 years, they have not made a single popular decision or smart, unpopular decision. Now they're already talking about draft of 18-year-olds, about drafting women. All that will happen if you will continue supporting them. With your support. All that is in the future. Your dear family members, after a 10-year prep course, will go to that war because you're supporting him. When your daughters will be drafted instead of sons, and they will be attacked because now they're servicemen, even though they're not on the front, they still become the targets, right? You will be talking about how bloody the Russians are, instead of understanding what exactly are you doing with all your likes and all that stuff in the social media. How else can I deliver that to you? I will not let you go. I'm also, I'm setting up my own central fuckery here. I will not let you continue killing yourselves until you understand how that system works. Well, Alexey, I think I know how it works in our case. There is an audience of your channel, audience of Alpha, and I think among our viewers, we probably don't have a large percentage of those people who do not understand that. We probably preaching a bit to the choir with our audience specifically, but the problem is how to send this message to the other audience. And you know yourself how different that audience is, what their moods are. We understand the sociological layers and concerns. There is some mistrust to Trump, grown up by President Zelensky, and bipartisan support from the United States is not more a goal for Ukraine because of Zelensky's vector. Apparently now we're all leaning all in for Democrat support. We know what Republican side is, and we don't want to go with it, with the Zelensky office. I understand Republican side is more complex. You're probably more familiar with that. There are at least 3 ideological centers of influence in it. There is a moderate part, there is more conservative part, and then there is an ultra neo-conservative part, like MAGA and all that. So, in good flow events, we should be building relations with each of these fractions. Yet, see how we treat Victoria Spartz, who is a Ukrainian by birth, who is the only Ukrainian-born congresswoman in the US, who was here how many times? 7 times on the front? She visited the front. I think you tried to bring her to limelight, to the office of the president. And what it is ending with today, just for basic words that are commonly spoken by Republicans, Zelensky's propagandist machine starts to destroy her or to pervert her words and obstruct her possible actions and breed more hatred to that part of American people. And it's not only in Trump that the problem is the way it is presented by Zelensky. It's a big fraction of Republican side in America, right? According to the recent poll, 53% of Republicans considered Zelensky to be one of the responsible people in this war. And today when Trump says that Biden, Putin and Zelensky are responsible for all these people dying, millions of people, maybe if it's not millions but hundreds of thousands, still big numbers. All the guilty parts are named, right? Over 50% of Republicans think that Zelensky bears a lot of responsibility or guilty for that process too. And we are not working with that in Ukraine, right? We don't need it. Oh yeah, right, Nikolai. We work with it very crudely. Zelensky goes to an opposition TV channel in America and declares that Vance is bad, finishing the story that he started in the Oval Office. Look, where it all comes from. It's the same story as with Zhvanynsky. Same psychological mechanism. When mother is protecting a child, for example. If you want to understand psychological mechanism, just take it back to 100,000 years ago. Mother was gathering berries, little 3-year-old nearby, a small baby is on her chest, and suddenly there is a hyena or some tiger nearby. What is mother doing? She grabs a stick and readying herself to the mortal fight to defend her kids. And here on the stick, there is a name of Bulgakov for Ukrainians written. What Ukrainian mom does, she throws that stick as far as she can, and she says, I'll rather fight barehanded. She takes another stick, and there is Zhvanetsky last name on it. She throws it away again. She is told, go run, take shelter. And she runs to the subway. And that was dug during the Soviet times. And then she screams that Soviet Union is destroying her. Normal political leaders who need to be sort of parental figures to people of the country should not care about what is written on the stick that they use to fend off from hyenas, and what's written on the shelter, and who built that shelter. If you really care about your people. What this project does, what Zelensky does, what the Central Signal does in Ukraine, they toss away everything that they don't like. Yet talking about Ukrainians that we are good shepherds of property. If we were good shepherds of property, we would have owned Russian language, history, all their political events, all of their figures. We would be taking and absorbing everything. Because in Bavaria, there is a beautiful castle that was built by a mad king who was a great builder of his time. And there is a pantheon of great Germans there. Do you think who's there on one of the important places there, near Kant and the lake? Catherine II, a German. They own that famous Russian Tsar. So they accept it. And we could have ingested, we could have accepted all that. We could have owned American sympathies. Yet we go to American media and we start cursing them that you do not love us the way we want to, you do not understand us, and then we demand aid from them. This is God, give me powers. I am trying to not use the cuss words here. This is worse than madness. This is complete deterioration of mental acuity, and people do not understand what they're doing. They're praising it. It's same as the soldier on a position facing Russian attack. He takes the bullets out. Now don't like the bullets, don't like machine launcher, don't like grenade, it's made in Soviet Union. Take the helmet off, it's made in the United States. Take the bulletproof vest because it's from Hungary, and then undressed to his underwear, he's defending his position with bare hands because he doesn't like the tools, right? Because it's produced on some Republican-funded facilities in America or Soviet goods or some of the countries that he doesn't like. You're cursing Republicans, but you're using the weaponry produced at the generally Republican factories, because most of military-industrial complex are rather red in America. End of the first hour.